Hey everyone, my name is Andrew Davis and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my sponsors, Mixum Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator to let you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service support, Mixum is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. And right now you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials. And the company has also printed so many successful Kickstarter campaigns. A bunch of them you even heard about on this very show. And somebody I know is printing with Mixum coming up very, very soon, but I can't talk about that. I know this because they're about to use my promo code. And so they offer services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. And Mixum can print and reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to Mixum.com. And they are right now running a promotion of listeners of my show can drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of a order to get a 5% discount on their first order. So that is Mixam.com. Again, type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab to get 5% off your very first order. And also you can use Pop Anime Comics to get 10% off your order at BCW Supplies, because, well, saving money is important. So please go do that, because I would like my comics to arrive perfectly off of your Kickstarters or eBay for that matter. And so without further ado, I have with me comic creator and writer Preston Poulter. So welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I deal
with a lot of printers. I've never actually worked with Mixum before.
It's okay. They're making this happen. They're making the back end of season 2 and most of season 3 happen. So Obviously, I'm very thankful for my sponsor, because without them, I would not be here. So Actually use them, guys, if you can, and you need your books printed, and it's a good deal. Please use them, because they do a great job from Mixum books that I have gotten and everything in between. I can't say enough about it, and I just want them as a sponsor forever, because, well, I don't want to pay any more out of pocket. But anyway, it's not about me today. It's about you. And you have a Kickstarter going on, Lords of Iron. So,
yes, although I you know what an audible is in football?
Sort of.
Okay, all right. I played 1 year of high school football, but I developed somewhat of an appreciation for the game. And the quarterback comes up, right? And he looks at the defense, and the defense can, oh, no, timeout. Okay.
Gotta spike the ball.
Yeah. So the quarterback comes up and he looks at the defense, and, if it looks like the play that the coach called is going to be a disaster, he can do what's called call an audible, meaning he shouts out a command, a code, because you don't want the other guys to understand what you said. So it'll be like blue, green, 42, blue, and then and then the team understands. Oh, he called an audible. That means we're gonna do a different situation here. So yes, Lords of Iron, the comic book that I sent to you. I am actually thinking of moving the Kickstarter back, because I already did a Kickstarter for the Naughty and Nice Trinity covers, which should be on that PDF I sent you. I think at least the nice cover is there. I don't know if you got to see the naughty cover, but yeah, we already had that. Yeah, so that's the nice cover. That's RB White, and it's a great looking piece of art.
I don't want to get in trouble on Facebook with the naughty stuff.
Of course.
Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm already screwed on YouTube, so clearly.
Fantastic. So yeah, so we did that, and I'm about to fulfill that, hopefully either this week or the start of next week. And then I was going to go, okay, let's go into Lords of Iron main campaign, where I'm going to offer a book for $10, which includes shipping here in the United States, because I try and offer my valued customers the lowest price they're going to find in crowdfunding. And I really don't know of any crowdfund comic book that's going to get you there $10 including delivery. I mean, that's pretty cheap. But anyway, so I was all set to do that, and then I thought to myself, Preston, why don't you move this one around? Because December is not the biggest time for crowdfunding, and I've got some really fabulous artwork on this one. Here, I can show you. I got Scott Harbin And just yesterday I got, and that's also part of the thing. Oh yeah, the interiors, aren't those great interiors?
Oh yeah, they're nice looking.
So anyway, just what I was saying is, I was thinking that I was going to run this in December, but now I'm thinking maybe I might push this one back a little bit to like February. I hope that was a decision I was pondering today. I hope that
So
doesn't throw off the show.
to talk about me and
Yeah,
everything that I'm in, I was going to be launching my campaign, and I wanted to launch in November. Things got messed up, so
right.
I've actually chosen to launch in January because
Okay.
there's this little holiday called Christmas. I don't know if anybody heard
Exactly.
about
Oh yeah, exactly.
it, but I realized that people money's tight during the holidays,
Tends
and
to
all.
be.
So that's
Now,
why I
now the
chose.
good news is, because I do run campaigns during December. I'm not saying I'm not going to run a campaign at all. Like a friend of mine came to me, and it's like an amateur. Like I help mentor comic book creators, and Larry Holder. He's When he met me, he had a unfulfilled many months, maybe a year late Indiegogo campaign, and he had no way to get that fulfilled. So I was hosting a campaign on my channel for the best script, and his thing got picked for the best script. So I produced that script, and we just did the fulfillment on that one like a month ago. And he was so happy about that. He's like, "Can you help me produce this?" I ran out of money on this other one, so we made some arrangements. So now that book is done, and I'm like, okay, what if I ran this amateur project during the month of December? Because like it's not going to be my best offering. It's an amateur book. It's an orphan. I brought it in from the cold. Here it is. New cover on Kickstarter. It makes 500, 1,000, $52,000, whatever, and then you ship it out. And now you're in January, and now we can start rolling out some big guns. And I got Palace of the Golden Princess coming up. It is a fantasy comic book. I uploaded and that one's all done. Like they're starting issue 2 right now, so I have a lot in the hopper. And I'm like, okay, I've got these projects. Which one should I put? And I'm like, I'm going to put the smaller book during the smaller month. I mean, December is a huge month for a lot of things, but crowdfunding people tend to get a little So I'm thinking of running Larry Holder's campaign for Lunar Rise or something in December, and then in January, Palace of the Golden Princess, which is a D&D comic, and people love the artwork on that one. It's like fantasy, you get to just show boobs and butts and guys with big chests and swords, and like people love that stuff. So I'm thinking of that, and then I'm like, and then I'll put Lords of Iron maybe in February. That way, see, some people have the book now. Like you have the book, you have the PDF at least,
I
and
enjoyed it.
yeah, and that'll create a buzz, and other people will be like, "Oh, hey, the people are talking about this thing. I want this thing. How can I get this thing?" And I'll be like, "Here it is, February. Boom, $10 gets it done." And by the way, I shared my screen. That's a Scott Harbin cover. He's he does good stuff. So that is the most expensive piece of artwork I have ever commissioned, but I think it's pretty gorgeous. So that's going to be a cover for the next Lords of Iron campaign. And like I said, I'm thinking of pushing that one back to February. But
And so just to even talk about this, it's very interesting when when people sort of say, "Hey, look, I want to," because I threw out the question
right,
to a bunch of people because obviously my campaign got all messed up, and now I'm launching in January, ideally January 1st. I'm
right,
sort of setting up a bunch of stuff, and I actually think it's going to be better because I was ill prepared in
right,
reality. I'm looking at it, I'm fixing like 90% of it. But I threw it out, and a lot of people are like, "Hey, don't even launch in January." And I'm like, well, I really can't hold off anymore because if I launch in February or March, it's going to mess up the entire year, and it's going to mess me up financially and a variety of other things.
right.
But the idea is that I am well aware that December is a nightmare, but it is very cool that obviously you have a lot of stuff going on and that you are running somewhat of a campaign and involved in December, and then you're also saying, "Hey, look, I'm fulfilling for the
Immediately, yeah.
100
And
version."
and what I was talking about with my printer, like I have a local printer here in North Texas, and I can have them print like 100, 200, 500 books, and they'll turn it around for me in 3 days. So that allows me to go, okay, boom, here's Kickstarter campaign completed, fulfilled. Here's the next one. I do like cycle time. I've been able to dramatically reduce cycle time. And then that allows me, okay, here's a December campaign, boom, it's done. Now here's a January campaign. I've run and fulfilled like 21 Kickstarters at this point, and like I got it down. So. Anyway, so yeah, that's my Scott Harbin cover there, and people have been really enjoying. This is the main cover here on this T-shirt, and people have been really commenting about this T-shirt. Like I just got it off of Redbubble. And you can also get it on Redbubble.
That's not the main cover, right?
No, that's the special cover. That's the RB White Naughty and Nice cover. This cover here that people are commenting on, that's the one that's going to go on the $10 delivered book with a $5 price tag. But shipping's built into it.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk all about that, I promise, and we're going to talk a lot about the artwork. But one of the things is that obviously we spoke a lot just about Lord of Iron and all that stuff, but I don't think anybody knows what it is. And so I'm curious what the basic premise of the story is for those who don't know what it is. Don't reveal too much because obviously I enjoyed it. I read it. It's an enjoyable story. And there's some interesting Easter eggs in there, I'm going to say, that we're going to talk about. So
I mean, Lords of Iron represents my first step of what my first real book of what I'm hoping is going to become an accepted thing. And that's, I have, White Lily, which, did you read that one? It's pretty cool.
I did read White Lily, yes.
Yeah. And people love that story. And they wanted more of it. And I'm like, well, I can't really do a sequel. It's pretty definitive. But I'm like, what if I changed the setting? What if I took Kaya and Lily and put them in a sci-fi setting? And that's what Lords of Iron was kind of started. Is okay, I'm gonna update White Lily, and I'm gonna put Kaya and Lily in space. And you read it. I mean, now we have Kaya and Lily in space, right? I mean, so White Lily fans should get their money's worth. But then for the villain, I actually ended up using 3 of the characters from Guinevere in the Divinity Factory. I don't know if you read that one, but that's my my kind of steampunk, cyberpunkish comic book about a woman who is a former sex worker and learned a bit of magic, and so it's her kind of unique path to learning more magic and doing her quest and all that. And along the way, she runs into a succubus and a homicidal android. And I'm like, what if, in this mirror universe, because I'm free to go, okay, new story, new continuity, right? And I'm kind of embracing the multiple parallel worlds and all that good jazz that other people do. So I'm like, all right, over here in this world, which may just be future world, or maybe it's, who knows? But Guinevere, the succubus, and the android all ended up merging into one being named Trinity. And in part, I was thinking Robotech. I was like, I grew up on Robotech, particularly the Macross saga. I really love that one. And there's a lot of, the Macross saga in White Lily. We got fighter pilots. There's a very depressing war. And we're talking about these people's love life, as they venture out, and sometimes not all of them come back. And that was going on a lot in the Macross saga. And I'm like, all right, I wanted to, in part, I'm like, putting Kaya and Lilia in the Macross saga kind of thing was kind of my initial premise. And I'm like, okay, so we got big giant robots. You've read it. We got big giant robots. And
I know all about this. This is like, I'm a 90s kid, and I watched Robotech. I'm seeing Robotech in like 14 days. Macross Plus is in the movie theater.
There you go. Yeah, fantastic. So, but, in Robotech, which was, this kind of Frankenstein thing, we go into Southern Cross when we get to, I don't know what you want, like the Southern Cross saga part of Robotech. And they introduced the Robotech Masters, and there was this concept of the 3 who act as one. And I was like, okay, I wanna do that. So, but I created, instead of 3 separate beings who are clones, I'm like, it's one being who speaks with 3 separate voices. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I read the book.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, because some people don't get it. Some people are like, why does but I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like they're fused into one creature that and how unnerving that must be to outsiders to be sitting there talking to one physical being who will talk to you with one of three voices, and one voice is kind of nice, and it's like dealing with the movie depictions of multiple personalities, aka schizophrenia, which we saw in, what was that, the, where they introduced the supervillain that they fought in. I don't know. It was M. Night Shyamalan's.
Oh, Glass.
Yes, but Glass. But before that, it was where they introduced the
Shatter?
villain. Yeah, where the multiple personality villain.
You have the James.
Yeah,
So
James
I can't think
McAvoy.
of-
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Professor X, pretty much.
Right. Yes, Professor X. So like it would be like that, and so we've got this literally multiple personality villain named Trinity, who commands a race of engineered beings, because I think that's kind of at least that's a trope that we should be exploring. I don't think it's it's reality.
Yeah.
Like, we are learning how to affect our own genetic code, and in the future we are going to be doing more of that. I can't tell you who or how. I can't predict the future like that, but I can predict in the future we are absolutely going to be tinkering with genetics,
Well,
and I'm
yeah, I
pretty
mean, we're
sure
doing it right now.
we're pretty sure we're already doing it now.
You look at companies like CRISPR, and
Right.
there's a bunch of therapeutic,
Right.
companies out there that are modifying genes right now that with people
Right.
that are alive, and then are also curing blindness and other things. And it's only a matter of time before we start really messing hard,
Exactly.
with people. I don't think we're there yet for another 20 years, but we're gonna
Right.
get
But
there.
and then the thing becomes like, okay, well, what do we want to what design parameters do we want to put around the creation of life? Because now we are, now we're literally playing God. We are creating life to our own custom specifications. The more we understand about it, but when we start looking at space, humans are not very good at space. We evolved for not space, so our circulatory system is designed to force blood to our head, because that's where our thinking happens, and gravity is pulling our blood down, and so the body's like, no, no, the blood must come up. But when you're in zero gravity, that's kind of an issue. Like, your circulatory system's forcing all this blood to your head, and it creates migraines and it's annoying. And wouldn't it be cool, because some creatures can be frozen and revived. That happens, right? Like,
Yeah.
some creatures are able to do that. Humans are not able to do that. But wouldn't it be cool for space travel if you had a life form that you could freeze and revive? Presumably, we can figure out the genetics at some point on how to do that, right? And like, we could create a far more perfect spacefaring creature that could hibernate for a prolonged voyage, that could exist well in zero gravity. Because that's another thing. If humans are in low gravity, we lose our bone density, our blood starts clotting. There's all kinds of health effects, and also there's radiation. So the aliens on Venus I show as having like this jet black skin, because one of the things you look at of the humans who exist in deserts is they have very heavily melanated skin, because they're suffering radiation every day. And you go into space, they're suffering radiation every day. So to me, it would make sense, like, heavily melanated, different circulatory system, maybe completely frozen at will. So like a different type of being then would be human, I imagine. And of course, they would probably also be integrating some form of technology, because if you're going to design a life form, why wouldn't you integrate like the cell phone, or something that would allow them to be contacted and cataloged and tracked, and like, here's updates and all kinds of stuff. So that's what the V's are. Then they have settled Venus, and they are ruled by Trinity. And so this, to me, represents what I see as the dichotomy, the struggle of the future, which is natural born humans, if you want to say, versus an engineered life form in competition for the resources of the solar system. And that's the premise of Lords of Iron.
And then obviously what's going on, because I think this sort of leads where now a war is about to break out, and
Right.
obviously the people and the creatures on Venus feel that well, humans, and I don't know if they're technically on Earth, but I think they're Earthlings to some degree.
Yes, Earthlings. Yes. Yeah.
You know, there's a not an even distribution of resources, resource
Right.
mining,
Yeah.
resource, obtaining, and the V's ruled by Trinity say, hey, look, we need resources
Right.
to expand and to go out into the galaxy. And well, Earth doesn't necessarily want to give it. And there was possibly, I think, a war before this where
Right.
the V's sort of might have lost. I think
Yeah.
and a treaty was put in place. And then now, I guess, they're like, screw it. We're going to
Right.
war and we're going to just take what's ours. And
Right.
we kill all of them, but we want all the resources, or we want a fairer deal, for lack of a better word.
Right.
And it's so interesting politically because typically at this point, I'm presuming negotiations did not go well. Presumably before.
Well, as von Clausewitz wrote, war is diplomacy by other means. We wanted the belt. We took the belt. Now our troops are on the belt. So let's keep talking. But germane to our conversation is the fact that there's a line from Lion in Winter. It has my troops on it. That makes it mine.
I mean, what is it? Possession is 9/10 of the law, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously that's what's going on. And then, well, going to the opposite side of this entire comic, because I don't want to ruin too much here, in which I'm being very, very polite about this, and I'm not trying to ruin anything. Well, Earth knows.
No, I mean, feel free to show the art. Look, I'm something else I'm doing. I do a lot of comic shows, and I found that giving out a sample of my book is in my best interest to do, because people are walking by and some of them will stop and talk. But if I was to really sit there with like a little sketch pad and put a little hash mark and compare, probably 1 in 10 people whose walks by your booth will want to stop and talk to you just organically. But if you offer them a free book, all of a sudden it's 1 in 3, and they'll talk, and often they will give you their email address so that they can find out about future Kickstarters. And sometimes, of the 1 people in 3 who stop and talk, I will be able to convert 1 in 7 of those into a sale, so, and meanwhile, the other 6, well, they have a book, probably half of them, maybe more than half, left me their email address, but they will always ask me, hey, can I get your card? It's been great talking to you. I'm like, you don't need my card. You have my book. It's got my information on it. It's got my artwork in it. It's got my storyline. Everything you need to know is right there in your hands. So I like doing that, and to me, it's the best way to build an audience is to get people.
Isn't it also chalked up to customer acquisition? Because one of the things that I understand is that I sell comics on eBay, and so do you.
Yeah.
It's very passive to me, but I'll throw a sale up into a Facebook group that has 6,000 people, and when people are looking for a particular book, they want that book, and then I make a big sale on that book because I have books I particularly deal with companies like Zenoscope and things like Aspen.
I also do Zenoscope. I haven't done Aspen yet. Is Aspen good?
I deal with old school Aspen, like Michael Turner Aspen. So I haven't dealt with anything major from Aspen in the last 3 years, but I go backwards, not forwards, because I think Aspen, like Michael Turner Aspen, all the old stuff that people love, and they're like, oh my God, who's Michael Turner? This is Michael Turner. I love Michael Turner. That's usually how that conversation goes. But it's the idea that, that customer acquisition cost is so low. But I would pay, to be on an advertising people's shows if the customer acquisition, because I chalk it up to customer acquisition. And I think a lot of people.
You mean acquisition?
Yes. Acquiring customers is a very
customer acquisition. Exactly.
Yes. I mispronounce words all the time.
Okay.
I'm the worst. I speak, and then I'm now getting paid to speak, and I suck at it 90% of the time. So
I understand.
I get words wrong all the time. I admit my fault.
Yeah, I discovered. I'm like, okay. 1 people in 10 will just naturally want to stop and talk to me, but 1 in 3 will stop to talk to me if I offer them a free comic book. And of that, I'll make a certain number of sales and get a certain number of email addresses, and it's all the good. So I'm like, how do I lower my costs? So I just got off the phone with API today, and to print up 5,000 Lords of Iron #1, they will print them for me at 67 cents a copy, which is not bad. So now I'm giving up 67 cents, but 1 person in 3 is going to stop. They're going to talk to me. They're going to take the book. They're going to leave their email address, and maybe I'm even going to sell them something.
But
And,
it's also the idea that if you get an email, that email theoretically could be way more
it's
money.
more than 67 cents, right? As long as that email has a lifetime value on average more than 67 cents, I've made money. So it's.
So I think I read a study that if you do email marketing correctly, even if it only has a 6-month value, a email could have anywhere from a $5 to a like $30 average.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are really good at this stuff. Wind up having like a $33 to $34 on a 1 email position, which is crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, I'm not anywhere that good. But
it's the idea that if it costs you $1 to acquire an email and you're making $34, I don't know where else you're going to make a 34x unless you got in on the ground floor on Tesla.
Exactly. Yes. So that's where I'm like, giving away books is awesome. So I'm doing a big, massive print run on Lords of Iron, and I will be offering some of the rare variants and so on, most likely in February. So. I'm glad you liked it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love the fact, because you already mentioned the fact that you have recycled a bunch of your characters as well. And a bunch of these characters that you recycled are sort of on the good side. I think a few of them are.
Well, yeah, the interesting thing is that Guinevere was the hero of Guinevere and the Divinity Factory, and Kai and Leo were the hero of White Lily. But here we have Guinevere being kind of part of the baddies. But at the same time, she's the nice voice of the baddies. She's the one going, we really shouldn't hurt them.
So to even talk about that, because and I'm going to drop a name, and I'm hoping I'm taking a shot that you know the name, Osamu Tezuka.
I do. All right.
So Tezuka
what has he done?
He's done Astro Boy, Blackjack. Okay. So he's the godfather of anime, and he has a system called the Star System, where he takes a lot of his characters and they maintain their normal traits. So if a character is an anti-hero, that character will remain an anti-hero, but it has a new name, slightly new look to it, but the core character is there. So for instance, a character like Blackjack might appear in another, one of his mangas and animes, but it won't be named Blackjack. Except Blackjack appears as Blackjack everywhere, but a guy like Rock, who's a core Tezuka character, will have some of those moral traits that Rock has. Rock will never ever be a bad guy. He'll be an anti-hero or he'll be a hero. And it's very cool, because I would imagine when you're writing Lords of Iron that people who know your work are like, oh, I know this character's shell outline, and it's very rewarding, even though it's a new character. But I will also imagine that some traits that existed in those characters too shines out, and some things stay the same, some things don't. And I don't know how to explain that reading experience to somebody who's never experienced that, but it must be sort of cool to write it. And
I mean, that is part of what I was trying to do. One, my goal is that if someone who's never read my work before picks up the first issue and reads it, will they be lost? And I'd like to think the answer is no. Now, granted, honestly, the part where people seem to get confused sometimes is that I have one character who speaks with 3 voices, despite the fact that the letterer has, giving different colors, like, Guinevere speaks in blue, and the android speaks in green, and the succubus speaks in red, but people still get a little confused on that one. But for the most part, I feel like even if you've never read my stuff before, you can read it and go, okay. But if you have read my stuff before, these characters have more context. and that that provides for kind of a deeper experience. So
Yeah, I agree that gets a little confusing, but I don't think it's going to confuse anybody beyond, if you just go into the store and reread the thing twice like I did, you'll be fine.
right, yeah,
And you're going to have to read it twice anyway if you want to be entertained. So you're really not going to lose on this one. I'm
right,
just saying that, it could get slightly confusing, but I don't think anybody's going to be like, oh man, I didn't read Guinevere and I didn't read White Lily. I don't know where I'm at. I think,
right.
obviously this is very self-contained for those who are wondering if I can handle it, and I'm a pretty average comic reader. I think everybody will be fine on this
Good.
book.
And I mean, I was trying to provide, even if some things kind of go over your head. Look, I got a giant robot battle. They got guns and there's explosions and missiles, and it's hopefully it scratched a little bit of the mecha itch, because in looking around, I don't see a lot of mecha comics. Even Robotech. We mentioned they did Robotech Remix, but then quarantine happened, and they're like, "Oh, this is on hiatus." But now quarantine's kind of not really going on anymore, and I don't see any Robotech Remix, so there's not a lot of mecha comics out there. You know. Um.
There's only one that I've seen on Kickstarter, and it's Mavericks or Marvricks,
Hmm.
and it's by Aaron Neff and Frequency Girl, and I mean that's like a pure mecha comic. It's
Okay.
almost like shoot I can't remember, Total Eclipse. That's how it reminded me of that comic. And what I read of it and what I enjoyed of it, it was really enjoyable. And
Okay.
but like, yeah, I don't see mecha comics, and even in anime right now, we have sort of left the end of anime mecha for a while, where there are mechas out there, but they are far and few between right now. Where we are not in the age of mecha anymore, and
Right.
it'll come back. It'll come back.
Right. And so that's what I figured. Why not? I tend to be a contrarian, which we were just talking about. I don't mind marketing campaign in December. I know it's not a good time for crowdfunding, but at the same time, there's not a lot of competition because everybody's like, I don't want to crowdfund in December. So if you throw a crowdfund up there and it draws some backers and it gets over a few $1,000s, Kickstarter will be like, oh, hey, look at this. We have a campaign. Like they're happy to kind of, throw you a little bit of promotion because nobody else is on the platform in December. So, I like showing up when there's not much competition. So, I'm going to be doing a campaign in December, like I mentioned on Kickstarter for Larry Holder. I like trying to come out with a mecha-based comic book, despite the fact that there's not a lot of competition there. Well, because there's not a lot of competition there, and I think people are still going to like giant robots. And when we start talking about space, uh, look, we're already in a humanoid form in space. We have these humanoid pressure suits. All you have to do is add a weapon system, and now you've kind of got a mecha. So that's what we have. These kind of giant humanoid armored weaponized suits in space.
Yeah, no. I agree, and I think it's very interesting because I've heard a lot of. This is the only argument that I've actually heard of why you should run a Kickstarter in December, where all the advice was saying, oh, people saying, oh, it shouldn't matter if you have your audience or your audience needs it, they'll back it, and
Right.
I agree with that to some degree. But a lot of people are like avoid it and avoid it, and I really haven't heard somebody say, hey, it's a great idea to run one in, and obviously I wasn't ready looking back and, dealing with Kickstarter and, I mean, if you look around hard enough on the internet, there's enough reasons how all this occurred. But, it's one of those things that's actually one of the best reasons I heard is that there's less competition.
Yeah.
And also, maybe Kickstarter will throw something at you and put you in projects we love and promote it or put on
Exactly.
their front
Yeah.
page.
Yeah. And so, like, I think it's a good idea. I also I have I don't just have the one big campaign model, because if you have a campaign model where I'm just going to do one big campaign, well, how many of those are you going to do a year? I mean, probably two at most. So, okay, if you're going to do two campaigns, then you do like one in April and then one in maybe September or October, and then you're kind of done. But I try to do more than that. I try to do a camp as I tell people, my secret to Kickstarter is always be kickstarting. Just always have something to send people to. Always be fulfilling. The more you fulfill, the more customers will come to you, because how many times have they backed you and how many times have they got your book? Now it's confidence that builds, and they're more comfortable giving you more money, quite frankly. So that's what I like to do. But if you're like of the mindset of I just want to do one big campaign, I just want to plan for one big campaign, then yeah, you shouldn't run it in December. You should run it in April. But at the same time, when you're doing your campaign, everybody else is going to be doing their campaign. So, it's going to be a crowded field.
My campaign, though, is not in the comic sector, so
Okay.
I have
What
a
do you got
little
going?
less competition, even though it crosses into comics. It's more on the podcast side, so
Ah,
that's a
I'm
very
I'm I,
different field.
I'm also doing a crossover with my new fantasy comic book. It's We're going to do a comic book, but there's also going to be a D&D module and miniatures. I got this really slick looking miniature. So we'll run a campaign specifically in the role playing category and see how many of those people I can get. And when it comes to the role playing category, unlike the comic book category, when I look at my contemporaries in role playing, like their artwork is not all that. When you're putting out a role-playing book, you tend to think of, oh, I wrote this many pages of content, and I put out this many monsters, and I put this many, like art is kind of, oh, and I found my buddy to draw this cool sketch cover, but me, I'm approaching it like, okay, I want, the artists that I put that people already pay money for, and I'm going to put them on some role-playing stuff, and I think it's really going to blow the doors off the RPG market. We'll see. I'm hoping.
So I am not a big D&D fan, and I have never really played Dungeons and Dragons. I've never done any role-playing games. It's just never occurred, and I've never actually crossed into that path, oddly enough.
It is a growing hobby, and it really exploded during quarantine because people were sitting around, they didn't have things to do, and there were these virtual tabletops where you could get together, and it provided kind of, it's kind of like going to a bar and then you're talking to people, but you log into these virtual tabletops, and oh, I'm playing a dwarf and that guy over there is playing an elf, and here's the dragon, and we got the thing, and we get to roll the dice, and it provides cool social interaction. So during quarantine, there was a ton of interest in D&D. Like the D&D went up, and it was already doing okay, but it kept going up. And so I was looking at it like, this is a market I need to get involved in.
It's just one of those things that just never happened, and I have so much stuff going on that I don't even know where to fit it in. And that's my problem, is that like between this thing and running my eBay business and actually having free time in my life and relaxing, I think that would just kill me. And it's just one of those things where there's 15 things I could choose, I can only pick 8. And so that's where I'm at as an individual. But I'm looking forward where obviously I just am waiting for Santine Phoenix's book that just came out, that's coming out. And there's an update with that, and I'm super stoked for that book. That did really well, and what she's doing, and I know her for a long time at this point. 4 interviews with her, which is crazy. Fun stories with her too that I don't feel like sharing. But I digress.
There you go.
All the good stuff that you can't talk about happens off air. But yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm actually looking forward to that because I'll definitely take a look at your D&D comic / role playing project because it sounds fun, and I like the concept of D&D. I just don't have the time for it. So
well, you're fortunate. You got your time taken up with all these productive activities. Good for you. Other people may not be so lucky. What can I say?
Hey, it keeps me out of trouble. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah, exactly.
So even going further into this, because one of the things that you do that I like with your campaigns is, and obviously you punted the main campaign because there's a bunch of stuff going on, but you just ran a successful one where you run one for about, I think, 10 days, 10 to 12 days, and it's 1 in 100, position. And I think it's actually a super smart idea where you do only like 100 naughty covers of a particular book or a very limited number. You
Yeah.
do it on a short position. I think you did 100 of the nice covers and you're releasing them slowly. And the idea, from my understanding, and obviously we sort of touched upon this, was that then you take like a week off or you take a few days off and then you
Yeah.
do the main campaign. But obviously things
Yes.
change. But
Yeah.
I think it's
But in part,
brilliant.
things changed in reaction. See, like typically, for Guinevere had a growing audience, and this is one of those things philosophically. Some people like Spawn, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that Todd McFarlane doesn't know what he's doing, right? He's got a book. People buy the book. He puts out more of the book, and we're beyond Spawn 300, and that's a lot of. There's a real wisdom to saying people were buying Guinevere, I should keep making Guinevere. So, in saying, okay, Guinevere 5 is the end, there it is, there's your trade paperback. I may take those characters and use them in other stories. I may, bring back Guinevere for, Gatsby and Guinevere or whatever, but now we're going to pause and we're going to come over here and now I'm going to do a D&D comic or now I'm going to do a mecha comic. And, the Guinevere 5 did over 20 grand, and that was just awesome. And I was used to those. So I'm now Lords of Iron 1, and I'm like, well, it was no Guinevere 5. And so that's, and because I'm used to doing 2 campaigns, okay, I did the number 1 to make 100, and it didn't sell out. This was Guinevere, it would have sold out. So that's where I can go, you know what, man's still a little soft. Maybe I haven't talked to enough people about this one. That's where I'm like, maybe I should make adjustments, push this campaign
Even
back.
to go further into that, because that's where my question was going to go, is that obviously when you're doing a campaign,
Right.
Kickstarter is all or nothing.
Yeah.
So, you got to make your goal high enough that people take you seriously, but
Yeah.
also people that it's not out of reach or it's not so much of a struggle at the same time. Because if you set your campaign for 10 grand and you did 9,500, and you don't fund it, it's not, I don't think it's a waste, but it's not a success either.
It's certainly a disappointment. That's
a nice way to put it.
Moment.
I prefer, a snafu, but disappointment's a nice way how to put it too.
Disappointment, yeah.
But I think where I'm going with this, and it's this idea that if you do the make 100, and then I think you did like 39 or 4 grand on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did around 4 grand. Yeah.
If you know that you need 10,000 now to get this project to fully printed and handled and all that stuff, all of a sudden, now when you launch the main one, that goal line is moved downward in order for you to do something you can actually assess. And I don't want to say you're testing the market per se.
I'm testing the market. I absolutely do. Yeah. You test the market.
I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. That's why I say it. But it's the idea that you now understand saying, okay, we just sold out of A, B, C, and D, or we have X amount left. Maybe I need to revise the strategy slightly and give you some insight, and it gives you some more data points. And I think that people because now a lot of people are doing nude covers. Obviously, I'm a Zenoscope fan. Yeah. They are.
By the way, you want to see my nice cover for the fantasy book?
Sure, might as well. Right. When this gets onto a podcast, I'm just going to say I'm sorry to everybody. You're going to have to watch the live versions of this.
Okay. Wait, which window? Is it tab? Is it that tab? Yes, it's that tab. Okay, there we go. This is the nice cover. Hey, you. Why does it put this thing up there at the bottom?
Oh, well, we're not showing anything naughty because I really like Facebook right now, and I have sponsors, and I would like to keep them.
Okay. So there we go. So that's the nice version of Queen Arika's cover for Palace of the Golden Princess.
Yes, it's very nice.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the thing. It's fantasy, like people it's just she and I reuse some of the same, like she worships Viviax, the succubus. I'm recycled as much as possible. So I'm like, okay. And in this one, so there was a D&D module written in 1983, first one written by a woman, and it was pulled from the shelves before release by the publisher for too much racy content. And I went back and I got a hold of a PDF of it, and it's pretty racy content, particularly for 1983. But like I said, it's fantasy, so based on this original 1983 thing, there's like a female-dominated society where men are second-class citizens, and it's very, very femdom fantasy stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'm gonna run with that. So she is Queen Arica, who leads this society, and they worship Viviax the succubus, and of course she's going through ritual desecration to be made into queen again, and we get to see it, and it's kind of looks like that. So there you go. And look, people like this. People respond to this. I anticipate that this one's going to do pretty well. Meanwhile, like I said, Lords of Iron, I'm going to print up 5,000. I'm doing a lot of shows. I won't have it by C2E2, which I'm going to do in a couple of weeks. But then January, I'm doing Fan Expo New Orleans, and then I'm going to be doing Wizard World Portland. And I hope to have the books by then and go to the shows and be like, hey, here's this book, and I'm going to be doing some rare covers on Kickstarter. Here, leave me your email address. So I'm going to try and grow the audience for Lords of Iron. But meanwhile, I'm pretty sure Palace of the Golden Princess is going to do quite well. So
Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff going on with you, and obviously, I mean, pretty much, I think a bunch of people, if they're listening and want to share this out, I'm gonna be like, hey, opportunity to get a free comic.
yeah,
I'm just gonna put that right there because I like free comics. I
a
love
lot
free
of people
comics.
do. Yeah, a lot of people
Anybody who
do.
can send me a free book, I appreciate if you send something to me digitally or physically. I appreciate it.
So many people are just they're so jaded, but I know Americans are bombarded constantly by marketing, text messages and spam emails and advertisements. So when they're walking around the con, you're like, would you like a free con? What's the cat? I'm like, no cat, it's a free book. You want it, take it. I don't care. It is what it is.
So
So yeah, and I like putting my story in people's hands. I like growing the business. I like to think I'm doing the right things, but we'll see.
yeah, no, I just think that you have a very different business sense with the way you run your Kickstarter. I think that, doing a very limited Kickstarter with all the naughty stuff and separating it and making it very much an exclusive club is smart. I also think just getting that stuff out into people's hands, also having it, obviously clearly what it is, and then also understand that and giving data points. I think more people need to do that, and I don't see people doing it. And as I was stating, I see people doing, hey, let me run one campaign with both the naughty and the regular. And, I think people don't get it. I think people, I think sometimes it works, and it works a lot of the time, but I think people leave money on the table. And I'm not a marketer. I wasn't trained as a marketer. I'm trained more as a political science economist. And obviously, in my previous job, I was dealing with making billion-dollar policy recommendations.
There you go.
So that's my background for people who are interested. And if you look me up, it's not a secret what I was doing. But it's the idea that, obviously now I'm getting into the marketing game, and I'm building out a product next, February, March, that I think is going to be extremely game changing in the entire comic world.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a bold claim, sir. It's a very bold claim. Where the game of comic books is going to change in March.
I think the indie marketing game of it is.
All right, what's happening in March?
I'm not telling anything publicly live.
Okay.
Because the second I tell, everybody's going to steal it, and then I'm going to be out of luck, and I'm going to not be.
Okay.
I'm going to be poor, not broke. Poor. There's a difference between the two. So I don't want anybody stealing my idea yet. I want to do it first, and then you all can copy me after I make my first mill.
Okay.
But don't worry. The only way I will make money is by making people like you and a lot of other people who join me a lot of money too in the process.
There we go.
This is called capitalism, and I am a greedy capitalist. I'm the first person to say that. No apologies given.
And I gotta say, now that I'm coming out with like fantasy and role playing game related, I'm starting to go to those cons, and that's a different crowd than like shows up at the comic book shows, and they're different vendors. For one thing, I'm like the only guy there who has like a big wall of sexy prints, whereas at like a comic book or a pop culture show, there's going to be a ton of those. But at like the role playing stuff, there are people there who are dealing in role playing games and role playing game supplements. And I approach them. I'm like, hey, I'm about to make some stuff, and they see my artwork, and they're like, oh, I think I want to sell that because there's a dearth of good artwork and a lot of modern RPG supplements. So I think I'm hoping to change that game. We'll see.
Well, you're going to change the game, and in one way, I'm changing the way indie comics are going to be marketed moving forward. Come next year, and I'm looking forward to that journey. And I guess I'm about to become an entrepreneur.
Definitely.
And I'm looking forward to the journey, and I'm just legitly winding down and protecting my downside in the next few months. And that's the reason why I'm not doing it right now, is I have to secure certain things before I can go and do it, which I think makes sense because minimizing risk is important in my life. But that's enough about that, because if we keep talking, I'm going to spill it all, and then I'm going to have to come up with a better business plan. But I do want to back out of all this, and I do want to talk about some of my favorite topics, which is definitely talking about COVID and where that is going, because you're doing a bunch of shows. Yep. And obviously COVID is sort of a thing, and we have a new Transformer variant name apparently.
Oh, wait, here. I saw a funny meme. Hold on. I'm going to share my funny meme today. I didn't know we were doing, but here we go.
Hey, but when you drop Unicron's cousin as a COVID virus name, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I call it the way it is. I think I can say that without Facebook punishing me for it.
We'll see. Okay. Yeah, here it is. So I thought this was cute.
You know what it is though. See, I think we'll be safe because this is called parody. Yeah. And at this stage in the game, it's called parody, everybody. So I think everybody's an adult. I think everybody can handle and understand this is called humor.
It does sound like the title of a Star Trek novel, though. The Omicron variant. Like, oh boy.
I mean, it could be Star Trek. It could be Transformers. Let's just give it to IDW and see what they could do with it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sure the fine people at IDW can handle this better than you or me.
Yep.
But in all seriousness and jokes aside, like, where do you think it's going exactly, even with cons and all that stuff? Because obviously, you're doing a bunch of shows. Shows are coming back, but things are just crazy.
I don't look. People don't want to be locked down. People are tired of it, and that's going to end. That's all there is to it. Now it's not going to end evenly. Some states are going to be like, no, we still want to control everything and make sure no one gets infected. So everybody's got to have a mask. If you're not vaccinated, you can't work. Other states are like, no, screw it. In general, people in the as we move into the future, more and more people are going to be, oh, screw it, because the virus is mutating. It's not going to end next week. It's not going to end 6 months from now, right? Just like we have the flu, we now have coronavirus variants, which will continue to propagate throughout the human species for the foreseeable future, if not for decades, if not beyond decades, we just have to accept that, there's now a new disease. Essentially, we need to accept that the flu got deadlier, and sorry. Meanwhile, do we all want to mask up because the flu got deadlier and will remain deadlier going into the foreseeable future for a long time? I don't know. Like, that's the question that becomes, but it's not like these things are free, masks have an environmental impact, which I do worry about. I know I don't talk about the environment much, but it is something that I try to walk as much as I can. I try to cut down on my plastic use. I hate the fact I got to use all this plastic to bag my comics, but people want their comics in great shape, so I'm going to use plastic. I'm going to bag it, but I recycle as many
ECW,
boxes as I
Pop
can.
Anime Comics,
Yeah,
10% off your order if you're
there you
buying a
go.
book. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I get an affiliate out of this.
there you go.
Support a
So
small business is all I'm
yeah,
asking.
but like masks go out in the environment, and they're not good. They're going in the ocean, and meanwhile, like the more you lock people down, what we want to talk about the lives we're supposedly saving. How about the lives of people who, because depression rates go up because you're not connected with people anymore, and people start killing themselves. So there are costs to these actions, not to mention the erosion of civil liberties. At some point, we just need to go screw it. The flu got deadlier. Life is going to go on.
And then also, I'm curious even going in this because and I'm very open about how I feel is that my last con that I went to almost 2 years ago was not a good experience. It was one of the worst con experiences I ever had, and then COVID hit.
Right.
And so I am very reluctant to go back to a con, not because of health issues, but because I just had such a bad time. And I felt very disrespected. I felt, that I was treated poorly. And to this day, I'm very raw from it still. And we're talking 2 years out. I was supposed to go to another con as a fan panelist, and I actually canceled. That's how upset I was. And also, the other thing that's changed in my life is that I started this show, and I'm going to be hitting around 260 interviews. I think I'm going to be ending up in about 3.5 weeks. And I'm making money for the first time doing this stuff. And I have a feeling in 2022, I'm going to be making a lot more money, doing live streams and podcasting and continue to do this and other deals that are going to be coming up. And so I'm very, very reluctant to go back to conventions because I am making money outside of them. And I've never made money at a con, and there's not a path for me to make money at a convention. Now, I understand that with comics, and you're at a table and selling them, that there is a path. So I'm very reluctant to go back because there's not, as a panelist and as somebody who presents, there's no path for me.
They're like, what are you going to sell to people? If you don't have a product to sell to people, well, then you're not going to make it. Then you're just an attendee. You're just attending a conference, and it's how much money,
And it's fine that I get a free ticket, but also I wasn't making connections. I wasn't picking up interviews. I wasn't building out my brand. People wouldn't take my card, say, hey guys, you can follow me on Twitter or you can check out my show. And none of that was happening. And so at this stage, I was going just as a fan panelist saying, hey, I'll do a presentation and maybe I'll get a few followers. And that never occurred. And now I just post this interview up and the people are like, oh man, this interview is great. Let me see what else he's got going on. And so that's something that obviously I'm now figuring out. So I'm curious how you feel about conventions and all that stuff.
Well, I like them. As I said, I go to a lot of them. My Kickstarter success is in big part due to all those email addresses I have. I got like 3,600 email addresses. And when it comes time to put out the next book, that helps. And, when I go to a con, I'm amazed. Because to me, I'm just sitting there, I'm just talking to people, I'm giving out free books. I'm like, hey, sign up for the newsletter and whatever. And, and there's the iPad, my iPad, we're just playing music on my cool Bluetooth speaker, and they'll get down with them bad selves and type in their email address and hit subscribe, and life goes on. But at the end of the weekend, I'll be like, I picked up 90 email addresses or 140 for a big show. I'm like, that's a fair amount of people, and particularly if I could milk them at like $5, an email address, well then great. I'm not that good, but that's a significant benefit, and it allows you, the more the email list grows. I had a guy that over on my channel, Pocket Jacks Comics, I help people write, and I kind of mentor comic book creators. And so I had a new comic book creator. He'd come on, been working with me. He got, a script that was decent, and I helped him found an art team, and so now he had a comic book, and he got some cool cover artists. So now he had a comic book and some cool cover artists and a decent story, and he put it out on Kickstarter, and he made like $400. And I'm like, well, it's not. I mean, in like the first 2 days, and I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, you'll probably end up making 1,000, which is not bad for a first book. But he's like, well, could you market it for me, pretty please? I'm like, okay. So, I started marketing it for him to my email list, and the campaign closed at 4,200, which was more than Lords of Iron #1. I'm like, well, damn, now I'm bitter. But yeah, that's for this book right here, which I already have, because again, he's learning from me Rapid Fulfillment. But that's Angel of Darkness, which is now out there and in people's hands, and he's getting ready for his next thing. And that was just he's learned the power of an email list, where I was like, all right, I'll market it. Type up a few emails, and a few hours later, here's all these sales. Like, it's great. So
Emails are very, very important. And I think that, when you're running a campaign or anything at this point, I know people who don't want to do this. And until you're at the stage that you're big enough not to be able to do it, you have to do it. And
Right.
even if you are at that stage where you could hire somebody, you should do the first one. And the reason why is, I do all my editing, I do all my graphics, I do all my writing, I do all my booking. At some point, I'm hoping that I'll make enough money that I can go hire somebody to do one of these jobs. But my rule when I hire somebody is saying, I'm not going to ask you something that I didn't already do myself. So I'm not, if I was to go door to door, I'm not going to, and that was my business model to sell things. I would do it before I ask an employee of mine to do it. So when I am going to hire somebody, that's just how I function, because it's important that I used to have somebody who edited for me on a, per episode basis for my other show. And I used to edit, so I used to know what to tell them. And when I wanted it redone, I didn't feel so guilty because I used to do it too, and I understand what I need. And so that's just my motto. And, I'm not at that stage, but getting back to my point, I think people need to understand how powerful email lists are. And even if a 100-person email list is very effective,
Right.
because it's the idea that, like, Patreon says it, or this Buy Me a Coffee says, 100 followers or 100 supporters are worth more than 10,000 followers. And
Right. Yeah.
that's very similar with an email list, I think.
I agree. And I've seen that. My metrics reflect that. It's Facebook. Oh, you got 40,000 impressions with whatever, but it's the email list that really brings it home.
So I think it's very, very important. And then my final question to you before I give you a chance for self promotion is, where do you foresee Kickstarter going in the next 12 months? Because obviously there's a lot of projects on Kickstarter. People now are going back to cons, and there is the issue of sustainability, where I think, what is there, like almost 250 projects on Kickstarter, and a lot of people are back and stuff, but I don't know if Kickstarter's still on the rise or there's going to be a shift. And obviously, I'm not in the comic realm of Kickstarter per se. I'm a backer of it and I'm a consumer of it, but I'm not a, producer.
I feel like Kickstarter did well during quarantine. There were people who I don't know the hard numbers on this, so if somebody's out there, like, no, but your local comic book stores kind of suffered during quarantine because they were getting fewer traffic. More people were at home, more people were online. So I did really well with my Kickstarters. Like I said, Guinevere 5 brought in 22 grand, and that's I'd never had a book do that well before, and all that growth happened over the Guinevere issues, happened during the quarantine. So I think Kickstarter has grown at the same time I've been growing, and I don't see that changing really. I think people like buying stuff online now that they've had to learn a new skill. I don't think it's changing. And Kickstarter has a cool thing, it's like, hey, here's a thing that you can get. And I also sell on eBay, but when I'm selling on eBay, is the stuff that's already been on Kickstarter. So it's first, when you're on Kickstarter, it's like, here's the first offering. I'm only going to issue 100 of these nice or 100 of the naughty covers. And if they sell out, they sell out. And so, if you're an eBay guy and oh, this thing's going to sell out, it's never going to hit eBay, then you have to go back it on Kickstarter. So Kickstarter has this exclusive early access vibe to it and an audience that likes that, and that's not going to change. So,
yeah, I think exclusivity is the key, because I sell Zenescope books that have a 350 print run or a 200 print run, and those books fetch good money. I mean, I just sold a 200 print run.
Meanwhile, to my guys, and again, I work with a local printer here, but Nixon can probably do this, as can, like Greco, I know, Comic Wellspring, like a minimum order of 25. So I can order, because I'm going to a smaller audience, I'm not Zenescope, I can be like, this cover right here, 1 of 50, and it's a gorgeous cover. I'm like, 1 of 50, you don't want that? I mean, like, that is a deal. Like, I'm offering a lot of value to people through Kickstarter, and people respond to it. It's a unique thing that, like I said, is not going away. I love it. I've been glad to see. I've thrown a fair amount of shade over at Indiegogo, because Indiegogo, they just got infested with comic skaters over there, and they were all selling outrage and not delivering books. And increasingly, and I was absolutely pushing this snowball down the hill, but it seems to have, created an avalanche of just people going, I'm tired of ordering comics on Indiegogo that never materialize. And so Indiegogo has recently announced, like, oh, we're partnering with GoFundMe, and we're going to try and get the scammers off the site and work with people who, can't get their books out on time. I'm like, well, bad news for comics game. But I'm glad to see the question of integrity, which is always the step towards becoming acceptable for a medium, is kind of eliminating the scammers. And I'm glad to see us doing that.
It's complicated, and I definitely think that the comic world needs to clean itself up. And there are bad actors in a lot of areas in comics, and the people who are bad actors, I mean, I'm not going to say who it is, but I have a serious.
I'm suing one of them. I don't know if you know that.
I'm not going to press you on that, because I understand what legal issues look like. My father's an attorney, so I'm well aware of what it means to go be in litigation. But I have a personal issue with somebody where they crossed the line a little too much, and that thing got nasty. And everybody in the comic world knows, and the person who knows this, they know who they are, and they know crystal clear well who they are. And a variety of people, I would say there's about like 40 people who know the issue. So it's not that hard to ask who Andrew Davis has an issue with, and a bunch of people will tell you, and it's not who people think it is. But I digress right there. So obviously we've been speaking for a while now, and I do want to give you a chance to promote yourself, because I know you have Pocket Jack Comics. I think I got the name right.
Pocket Jacks.
Pocket Jacks and the comics, and then you also have the eBay store. You obviously have, I would say you have this campaign going on, but
I do. Yeah, I think I've swapped it up. But there's a link that I gave you for my next project, which was going to be Lords of Iron, but now, as I've been discussing, it's probably going to be my friend's comic Lunar Rise during the month of December. But still, you can follow the link. If you can follow me on Kickstarter, and that way, every time here's a new project, Kickstarter will inform you and go, hey, that Preston guy you followed, he's got a new book out. You should go buy it. And that's cool. And for that matter, on eBay, you can go and you can make me your favorite seller on eBay, and then eBay will send you emails and go, hey, that guy, he's got this book. So that's ways that people can opt in for marketing if they're interested, and that's cool. So yeah, there's the Kickstarter link. If any of the stuff I talked about, Luna Rises next, and then Palace of the Golden Princess, and then we're going to come back to Lords of Iron, and I got a lot of great stuff in the works, so I encourage everybody to follow me over on Kickstarter.
Yeah, and I'm going to just keep saying it, because it's true. You have to support indie comics and their creators. And what that means is obviously backing Kickstarters that writers, artists, publishers put out in the comic world. Obviously, if you see a project with somebody on Indiegogo, and there's a few who are really good out there and you like that, you should also be supporting those. Obviously, anything Preston touches.
Yeah. I would say, like, you don't have to support indie comics, but when it comes to like the majors, look, they are brand managers, right? You've got Batman, you've got Spider-Man, you've got Superman. These properties have been around for a long time, and they've made people a lot of money. And it's not like any writer or creative professional can go, okay, well, I'm sick of Spider-Man. I'm just going to kill him, and then we'll write some of this. No, that's not going to happen. Like, these are brand managers. We have to go. And I remember, like, I think under the Jim Shooter reign of Marvel, there was the illusion of change, but these characters never really changed. Although I know recently they've been doing some radical changes, and now Superman is gay and Thor is a lady, and all. Okay. I guess they are certainly being updated. But again, this comes back to the power of trademark. It's Captain America, but now it's African American Captain America, as opposed to some of the African American properties. So we have this where the major characters are undergoing these reinterpretations for diversity and inclusiveness and whatever. But still, I find the stories a little stale. Even if we're going, okay, now we're going with Kate Bishop, or now we're going with whatever. I still find the stories a little like, okay, well, superhero goes and does the superhero thing, and then they bemoan the fact that I don't know. But indie comics, I feel there's a lot more opportunity. It's a lot more dynamic. I have a lot more freedom. I don't have to worry about an IP that's been around for a century. I can be like, Guinevere is only a year old, so there's a lot more to discover and develop.
So with indie comics, you can go in any direction you want to go in. Right. And that's one of the criticisms of Marvel and DC. And even you can make the argument with companies like Dark Horse that do some licensing, and Titan Comics that does Robotech. There's only so much they can do with those works. And it's not that they're bad or Life is Strange. I like the game Life is Strange. But you can only do so much with a comic like that.
And even in, I wish a lot of times, I'll see something like Robotech. Like Robotech had problems in that it wasn't designed to be one continuous story. It was 3 separate animes that were glued together. And they could have fixed some of those dumb elements in, like the Robotech comic book. And they did a little bit. But my opinion, I always think they should have gone farther. And people are very hesitant with an existing IP that has an existing audience, and they just want to kind of give people what they want. And that's what the majors are going to give you. They're going to be giving people what they think you want. And I think indie comics presents a lot more dynamic, intimate storytelling where, like I said, I'm going to do Kickstarters, I'll offer 1 of 50. You can be 1 of 50 people who own a book. Think about that. There are only 50 copies of this comic, and when you own one, like that, these are deals that you're not going to get anywhere else. And it's, I think it's way more exciting than anything you're going to find in the majors.
Yeah, and even going further, and as I was stating, obviously when you support indie comics and you back Kickstarters and Indiegogos and other, platforms, or even people who are self-publishing indie comics, you're actually making this stuff happen. Because as you were saying, Marvel, DC, I would make the argument, Image, Dark Horse to some degree, those companies, IDW, those companies at this point, they have money to back up what they're doing, and they could burn through a lot of money. You and myself and a variety of other people cannot, and without money and without actually people backing, these books don't get made. And that's why you need to support people economically. But you also need to share out that you back somebody's Kickstarter on Twitter and on Facebook. You need to share out saying, hey, I backed this project. Here's why you should back it too. And it goes a long way. It doesn't cost you anything. And, it actually is super, super important to do that. And it also lets people know. And it also lets the writer or the creator or the artist know that, hey, you backed this project. And that's important just on a morale level and boosting up. You're saying, hey, I'm invested. And then even going further into this, let's say that, money's tight. I've been throughout this year where money's been tight. Money was tight a little bit at certain points last year as well. And I interview, probably about 140 comic creators a year now. I can't back every one of their projects. It's just physically impossible for me. But I try to share out as many of people's projects as I can. I try to interview as many of comic creators as I can because it goes a long way, and that's just as important. So if you're in a situation where you can't back a project, I recommend you at least share it out because you don't know who's watching. There have been people who have shared out their projects, and then they've gotten 6 backers. There have been interviews that were shared out, and I've got people backers because of that. And that's just as important as if I was backing. And it goes a long way because you don't know who's watching. So it's very important. And as far as I'm concerned, obviously Mix'em is a great sponsor. Again, 5% off. Use my name, Andrew Davis, and message tab if you're looking to print comics. Also, BCW Supplies. They do a lot of bags, boards. They have Pokemon card stuff. They got long boxes, short boxes, you name it, to store all your stuff, and a variety of other things that if you're a collector of anything, they have it most likely. On everything, if you type in Pop Anime Comics, it's in the description up above. You get 10% off your order. So obviously you got to bag and board your comics, and 10% off is a pretty substantial thing. Full disclosure, I do get an affiliate, but that helps keep this show up and running. So obviously if you're looking in that regard, please do that. And I have Buy Me a Coffee, so you can actually advertise on my show and buy ads, or you can just buy me a coffee. And again, all that money goes right back into keeping this show alive and making sure that I stick around for another year or so. And I'm just keep going with all this stuff, and I appreciate all the support. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Thanks, everybody. Follow me on Kickstarter, Preston Poulter, Pocket Jacks Comics. Take care.
And that is a wrap.
Awesome. Thanks so much.